So at INBO, we really like to look at the 7 pillars of the circular economy. This was developed by Metabolic, by Eva Gladek. And why we find it very useful is that it's a much more holistic approach as to, okay, what does 100% circular society looks like? So not only looking at materials, energy, and water, which are usually the most referred to, but also about biodiversity. So what is there in the first place? How can we support it? How is human society and culture preserved? But also the health and well-being of users and humans around, and also looking at human activities. So that's not just about valuing it on an economical purpose, but also other values which are created. And at the same time, so I'm sure you've seen this diagram before, but it's good to understand how buildings works, a little bit like onions, right? Living, breathing things that have several layers. And if we look at the way, on average, they currently build the building structure, it's about 75-100 years. Pipes, windows, and flat roofs about 30 years, and then the interiors, the kitchens, bathroom appliances, 10 to 15 years. I think actually 75 to 100 is quite pessimistic. I think we can do better, to be fair. And that's really in perhaps also understanding that certain things can last a lot longer, but then we can appreciate that other things might change more. And why I say that, for example, I'll give you a very practical example. In the project that I recently did, we provide automatically concrete tiles in the garden, and the doors come in certain colors, and then the homeowners move in. The first thing they do, they throw away the concrete tiles and they paint the doors again. So it's, you think, okay. Now, if we had known this before, we would have let them do it. So it's also understanding that people want to have ownership over their own space and will adapt them, but that the rest, the structure, also the piping can be designed in a way that it can last a lot longer. And also, I think in a previous presentation, Marlis had shown this to you guys about the building life cycle chain. And as you can see, really, we as the designers, engineers, the building team, we're actually quite far away from who will end up using the buildings we make and plan for. And that means that there's a lot of assumptions that are made about the way they are being used. And my question is a little bit, okay, can these users be brought earlier in the process so that really in the building life cycle chain, we stay as much as possible on the left side instead of having to go to reuse, resell, dismantle. So as a way to show that, I thought I'd show 2 projects of ours, so you could get some inspiration, where we allowed the homeowners to participate and kind of the results that came from that. So this is Space S. This is Tribe S in Eindhoven. I don't know if anybody's been there before, but it's in the south of the Netherlands. And this used to be a very big industrial park for Philips, the electronics company. And it had now become a very vibrant street full of shops and offices. And the housing association got a hold of this piece of land. And in the beginning, they wanted to make offices because of the central position, but soon realized that actually there's a high demand for housing, and that would be a better function for the area. And so INBO got asked to help with the thinking along process. So instead of designing a housing complex there, we had the idea of first attracting people to it. So what we did was simply put a panel on the side with the question, how would you want to live on Stripe S? Think along from scratch. We also made a Facebook group where people could join in. and we had a lot of interest and attention for this, where people came in. We had a lot of sessions together, and from those sessions and workshops, we were able to create a kind of DNA for the space. Now, these are a little bit abstract, you can say, but they really helped define the further themes in the project. And it's really important to have defined in the beginning so that we can then further develop the design. So what was requested from the future homeowners was really to have a space for green in the city, because it's a very urban position, very central in Eindhoven. So this was important to have green, but also an understanding that, okay, we have an urban context, the potential for coming together and doing activities together, but also having a clear sense of privacy and safety. That was quite important for some of the homeowners. Also having flexibility, so of use of the different spaces, but also having quite some frameworks, social frameworks put in place, the place to work. So that really resulted in these beautiful green public courtyards that we have. So in the beginning, the client actually suggested, oh, well, don't you want to fence this off so that people cannot come in? And the people really said, no, this is really an area for the city, so we want people to come in as much as possible. Also, something that often happens is that it gets all paved, because there's an assumption that people will not take care of it. But the homeowner said, no, we will really take care of it, and we find no problem in it. And now it's a really nice place to be. Also, how it acts like as a water buffer, which is very important, instead of having concrete flooring, which would not help. There's also a lot of vegetable and flower gardens on the rooftop, which the homeowners take care of them themselves and maintain themselves. So again, allowing for this independence and also coming together.
Do you also have this?
Oh, I'm back now. I think I've left for a minute. You can still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then came to the spaces. So we thought, okay, let's do a workshop together. So we emptied our entire office, and we made these really large walls of, how do you say this? Foam block, one-on-one, where the homeowners could build their own spaces. That was quite fun, actually. Really rethinking about, okay, we assume people want a certain amount of space, but what do they really think? And turns out most people actually didn't need or require that much space, but what they really wanted, though, was to have a kind of double height ceiling height, so that ultimately they could make an entresol or add an extra floor in there, so that, okay, if they expand it, then they could have extra flexibility for that. So, and also another requirement they had is to really keep the houses very simple, not very decorated, so that they could come in and make it their own space. So this is a little bit how the spaces end up looking like. As you can see, really nice double height spaces, but quite more on the smaller size if you think of the floor plan area. And also the staircases, for example, we didn't make, because some of the homeowners wanted to also create their own pieces of furniture out of it, so then they could kind of determine it. See, a nice trunk of wood as a handrail. And very nice to see how everybody really created their own space out of it. Also on the ground floor, there's common spaces, which we also left very blank at their requirements, because they wanted to hire them for community events, Or here you can see one of the homeowners decided to make all the furniture for the public spaces out of the timber that was used for the project. So as you can see, and also what was put in place was a sort of merit system. So that's a little bit when I talked about having kind of flexibility, but also structure in the social system. So the merit system worked. So it wasn't just about how quick you signed up for joining on the site. It was really about the amount of participation you had. So the amount of times you showed up, the amount of input you gave at the meetings. You had this kind of matchpunt, kind of a good point, let's say, and the more amount of points you got, the more priority you had over where you would live. And this is still in place and actually works very well because really it promotes involvement and is a much fairer system than if you showed up on time or if you were quick enough, let's say. And this resulted in a very diverse program. So you can see all the different sizes of housing going from 30 square meters to 120. You also have all the courtyards here in green and the roof terraces on the top. There's also students in the housing block, which are more on the corners due to that the other residents didn't want so much noise and disturbance, and that they also wanted to be together. And we have the lofts on the top, and we also have assisted living, so that's both for seniors and also children with disabilities. And on the plinth, this was a bit the shared space I showed you. There's space for living and working. To really create a kind of diverse neighborhood where everyone's needs are met. And in the end of the day, it's really about the neighborhood you're creating, and that there's space allocated for people to not only live, but also be able to work there, to have some independence, to even explore hobbies, and have a bit of a self-sufficiency. So that's Space S. And I want to show you quickly Little C, which is a project we finished in 2021. And this one's located in Rotterdam, so where I live. And this is a bit of a different approach to neighborhood making. And so I hope you'll see why. So really looking at what was there before or what wasn't there before, more like. So just really big piece of concrete plating, let's say. And it's really a place that people thought, why would you come here? This is the Hogeschool, Rotterdam, but further than that, you wouldn't go. So it was really, when we had the assignment, it was really tricky thinking, okay, now what can we make here? And it's really looking more on the cityscape and understanding, okay, what can this place bring to the city? So to the community around, that we really started to understand the possibilities. So here you have the Hemraedsingel. That's one of the old historic water routes, which has very old buildings. It's very green, very nice. And then also Het Park, one of the large parks in Rotterdam. And we thought, hey, why not here create a kind of promenade, so a water route, a water sidewalk that's also green to connect these kind of lost components and have our site be part of it. At the same time, actually quite close to the center and near the central station. It's also next to the EMC, which is one of the largest hospitals in the Netherlands. So it also has the potential to create a kind of west-eastern route and be a connector in that way. At the same time, we really thought about, we want to create a long-lasting neighborhood that's healthy and that's great to live in. So we started looking for references to this and where are neighborhoods where you like to live and that have lasted the test of time. And we really looked to the Green Village in New York for that and kind of uh, getting all the components out of it and understanding what makes a place like this livable. And it's really about the use of long-lasting materials. So here we have brick, but also about this informality that's created on the street, so that you have layers where there's public, but also an area to sit in front of your door that's also able to be green, and then finally you reach your house. And that's really uh, something we used as ingredients to really set an identity for the place. And that's really important because there really wasn't anything there. So starting with this identity and creating a kind of palette and elements for it was a way to really attract people to it. And then came in what we call the little team makers. And so the future house owners were invited to come in and share their input about the spaces they wanted to live in. And actually, we had already prepared a set of housing, but turned out some people actually wanted quite much larger places to live in, and others much smaller. So in the end, it created a real diverse program. And also, this is a great way for people to know their neighbors and already create Facebook groups, WhatsApp groups to further communicate and share with each other. So in the end, this is what we made. So we have 4 large blocks which create the kind of belt of the area and really protect the area against, here's a large motorway, against the noise, and it really creates a very calm and enjoyable atmosphere inside. There's 3 really green courtyards that are created with large trees in them, as well as 8 rooftop terraces. So those are private, and then the courtyards are then public. So you really also have like different layers of green and how people can own them. And instead of creating, one large tower in its place, by having per 3 block, you have 1 lift and 1 staircase to the car park underneath. You're really able to create all these kind of routes. So there's bridges in between, courtyards in between, and you really diversify the ways you can access your house, where you can bump into neighbors, have view over your area, and create a lot more friendliness and intimacy. It's also very important. And then,
Can I
as I
ask you
said
something?
before,
Sorry.
yeah, of
Sorry.
course, ask me anything. No, go for it.
Have you planned for this area to be like a material store for future buildings or something similar like that?
No,
That would be
that's
interesting because that's the
yes.
thing we are doing right now on the EVL Areal.
Yes. No, I understand. This we unfortunately hadn't planned though, but it would have been a great project for that.
Okay.
I agree. But at the time that we started doing it for projects, but at the time, because it started in 2017, if I'm right, we hadn't planned for it, so let's say. Yeah.
Okay.
But oh yeah, by the way, if you have any questions, just don't hesitate. I didn't say, but please ask. And yeah, and here's the large green promenade that is at the front. And something to note, we also designed it in a way that because mostly if you have a really nice green courtyard that you make for a project, people will tend to fence it off actually. And so they put a fence and then a lock, and so that it's really for themselves. So we designed it in a way that that's much harder to do, so that it's really something for the city. And through the use of so looking back at the ingredients, this kind of layering of public to private, you also really understand that, okay, people live there. and that there's a sense of privacy. So I can show you, for example, here, that's a view from one of the courtyards. So you can see actually people also live here. But you can see that by the different layering, and it's funny, when you walk there, you automatically lower your voice because you know, okay, there's people. And here are the bridges that connect the buildings. And as you can see, we really used quite a simple material palette, also based on the Green Village, using this red brick with different, what do you call it? Different color of wood, we say in Dutch. Yeah, plaster in between. No. Different color of binding, let's call it like that, to create an identity for each of the buildings. The bridges and balconies are steel, designed actually by an artist who collaborated with us. So he looked at the site and at the industrial character and identity of the place and wanted to bring it back into the building, which is fantastic. And then the plinths are all natural stone, which is also something that really lasts for quite a long time, and also looks good for a while. And underneath this whole where we are, which is actually the roof for the parking, there's an entire system of kind of a waffle system that collects rainwater. And so it can water all of this for up to 2 months. And it's also linked to the weather system in the Netherlands, so that when there's going to be a large pour of rain, it will empty itself into the sewage system. That's really important because we have a problem with overloading of the sewage system when there's downpours, because there's a lot of like drought and then downpour. So all these, the rooftop terrace and this area really creates this kind of buffering system. Here's the courtyard that looks to the... Yeah, tell me.
Can I ask again?
Sure.
What is the rainwater used for? Is it just for the toilets or for
it's just
showering?
the plants. It's just
just
the
the plants.
here.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just the plants. There is a recovery system for the toilets, but it's not linked to the collecting system. Mm-hmm. So that's different systems in place. Yeah. And then there's also so climbing plants. So you have to understand this picture is taken a year after it was made. So already it's very green, and that shows how quickly you can transform an area. And here on the ground floor we have also shops, and so again that helps in creating a vibrant and mixed neighborhood. But yeah, that's a little bit what I wanted to show you. I hope you found it inspiring. I didn't add my email, but I will. So if you have any question, you can always ask. It's not a problem.